All right, episode 2 of Let's Talk Music. Let's do this. So let's talk concert experiences today.
Sounds like a good idea.
Concerts you've been to, concerts you'd love to go to one day, and time machine concerts where you wish you could go back in time and check out a band or an artist that may no longer be with us anymore, or that we can't.
Just a show we missed. Yeah.
Just a show we missed that we would hear about growing up and just think, shit, I wish I could have been there.
Watching it on YouTube or something.
Yeah,
Netflix documentary or Amazon or something. Yeah.
So what would you say is the last concert you went to that stands out as like, holy shit, like?
Well, the last concert that I went to was with you when we went to see Testament and Exodus.
Yeah.
That was awesome. But the last, holy shit, I can't believe I'm here. Like, this is such a cool moment and such a cool concert. Would probably go back to the Metallica in Edmonton that we went to again with you.
At Commonwealth, yeah.
Yeah, it was just
such
a good show. Their stage was the whole entire length of the end zone for the football field and was awesome.
Yeah.
Especially when it got dark.
Yeah. Do you prefer indoor or outdoor shows? Do you have a preference? Like,
I usually prefer indoor.
indoors, yeah.
Yeah, I think I like the sound better inside than outside.
Yeah.
And depending on where you sit outside, you can lose a lot of the sound.
Yeah.
That's
and
fair, yeah.
it's always a crapshoot with what the weather's going to be like. Like, if it rains, I'm still going to go, but I'm not going to have as much fun. I don't want to sit in the rain and watch music.
Outside of the Calgary Stampede, I haven't been outdoors, like a big concert.
Mm-hmm.
I've only ever been stadium concerts.
Yeah, that Metallica one, before that, I can't remember the last time I went to an out. Actually, I could. It was just like a few small hip-hop shows, whatever. But like as far as a big...
Yeah, I've been to a few of those outdoor ones, but
yeah.
As far as like a big one, like Commonwealth does it well. They got those big giant speakers in the center that hang over the field. So they have it set up fairly well for it, but some of the other places where I've been to, like I went to one in Saskatoon, that they didn't have those speakers in the middle, so it was just everything off the stage, and with it open, the sound just... By the time it got to the back, it went away. Like it didn't sound good. You couldn't hear it that well. So like, they're tricky to do outdoor shows if they don't have the proper speakers.
Yeah,
and
which
gear
is
and
why that
everything
Metallica one was like credit to them.
Metallica does it right. They know what they're doing because they had 6 cameras there, like a full-on movie shoot for just their concert, and they have that at every concert. Like it's,
they know how to do live shows.
Yeah, they definitely do. And we get to go see them twice in one weekend.
Yeah, that's going to be
something. In a year and a half.
In a year and a half,
That's the first time I bought tickets for something a year and a half out.
I've never bought anything that far away.
It's like, dear God, I hope everybody maintains their health. And not just because I like them and I want them to stick around, but I also would like to get my money's worth.
I want to go to that show,
Yeah.
I don't want one of them to die before we get there. Nope. Or any of the other bands to break up or anything like that. I'm pretty stoked to see the Pantera reunion there, and even like Wolfgang Van Halen playing. Like I'm really looking forward to seeing him.
I'm very interested in the Pantera reunion and how that's going to sound.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like it's not a reunion; it's a tribute.
It's a tribute. So, I got to keep that in mind because in the back of my head, because to me it's not Pantera without the Abbott brothers, right? No. But I got to just remember,
but the guys that
tribute.
They're playing those roles are both, like, they're both friends with them. They're both heavily involved with them, which is why I'm really cool with it. Like, them having, Zach Wilde playing Dime's parts makes sense because Zach and Dime were such good friends.
Zach was a good choice for that.
Yeah. And Charlie Benante is really good friends with, with Vinny. So that makes sense there as well. Like, they could have just gone and gotten like a really good guitar player and a really good drummer and done it, but it's just like this makes it more okay. I think so.
Definitely. Yeah. What would you say is like can you even like rank it like the best concert you've ever been to, kind of like, or your favorite, like, because I know you've been to quite a bit, a lot. Is there one that stands out as like that's the one that, like,
as far as like the best overall show performance experience, everything all together, the Millennium New Year's Eve with Kiss in Vancouver
was
a ridiculous show. Like, when midnight hit, and they blew up everything. Like the fireworks show and the pyro show inside was, I've never seen anything like that. Like it rivaled any outdoor fireworks show I've ever seen.
I watched the table, you're shaking all the canvas.
And it was like, it was just so good there and huge. I mean, other than that, like getting to see the Stones is pretty cool. I saw them in Regina. Queen with Adam Lambert blew me away. How good Adam Lambert was,
Yeah, I watched him on American Idol, and right from moment one watching that, I knew he was going to be doing something pretty special. I think a lot of people figured that out right from number one.
And I'm not a fan of him, and I'm not a fan of like his style of music that he played. But when he performed with Queen, and now I've seen Guns N' Roses, I've seen the Rolling Stones, I've seen Kiss, I've seen some really, really amazing bands. He is in the top 5 frontman I've ever seen. He blew me away singing Queen. He was so good at it. Yeah. And if he ever puts out a rock album, I'll buy the shit out of that. Like, man, he can sing. He's got chops, He did so good at that. Blew me away. Like turned me right around on it. I was like, holy fuck, like, this kid is awesome.
Yeah. There's a few people like Kelly Clarkson and Carrie Underwood and Adam Lambert who have really all validated the American Idol entry point into the industry. There's more, but I mean that's a topic for another day. But there's some amazing talent that's come out of that.
Yeah, for sure. Another really cool show that I saw was the 9 Inch Nails concert in Saskatoon.
Oh, Trent
and just their like their video screen that they used on there.
I can imagine they know how to do it too.
He did awesome. And it's funny, he had this piano thing at the front of the stage, and there was like this person that worked for the band whose only job was to wait until Trent would play the piano, and then he would just push it off the stage and go do something else. And then this guy would just pick the piano back up and set it on stage and then wait until Trent did it again. And he must have done it like 20 times. I laughed watching it. Like, because that guy stood there the entire show just waiting for him to throw the piano off stage, and then he'd pick it back up and like, it was like that. That's a cool job. It was like, what do you do for a living? I was like, I pick up a piano. It was on this weird like stringy or springy metal thing. He just pushed it off. But that was cool. Rob Zombie puts on a good show. Ozzy, I've seen him a few times. He puts on a really, really good show as well. I mean, he doesn't move around that well. But
I'd have loved to see Ozzy back in the 80s. I think that's when I like Bark at the Moon kind of era.
Yeah.
That would have been, I think.
If you do go see Ozzy, you got to go see him in Saskatchewan just to hear him try to say Saskatchewan. That's worth the ticket price right there. Watching that man try and say that word is
worth the price of admission alone.
Yeah.
No doubt.
What about you? What are your big ones here?
There's the Slayer farewell tour that we both went to.
I forgot all about the Slayer ones. Yeah.
That one was big for me because just lifelong fan of Slayer, and it was like the last one, and it was just not only just to see Slayer, but to see all the other bands on that bill. It was I felt like we should have been paying like 5 concerts worth of like.
Yeah, Anthrax was on that.
Anthrax, Behemoth.
Behemoth was good. They turned us into fans on that one. They blew
I was already a huge fan, but I had never seen them live, so I was actually just as stoked to see them as I was Slayer.
Wasn't Lamb of God on that show too?
Lamb of God was there. And
I've only seen the of the big 4. I've only seen big 2. So Megadeth and Metallica. I haven't seen Anthrax or Slayer.
Anthrax,
I've seen all 4.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Anthrax. I remember we could see Scott Ian's goatee from like the very back when we were getting drinks there. It's like holy
big and bright,
man. Yeah, they were pretty good
too.
yeah.
I was a little disappointed though that they didn't play The Man.
Yeah, that's probably not one they play often though.
Yeah,
right?
But it's such a fun song. That's a good song. I love that song. I know it's a stupid, cheesy song, but it's my favorite Anthrax song.
Well, that's part of the problem when you're talking about your favorite concerts and everything else is you may have growing up and listening to a band and be looking so forward to going and seeing them, and then the couple songs that you might have near and dear to your heart that you really want to hear aren't necessarily in their playlist. I mean, they're not going to always have what's going to be in there, when they're doing the encores, but
well, and I mean, The Man is a throwaway B-side song, but it makes me laugh. I like the song.
So Slayer farewell is definitely up there. When we went to saw Sabbath,
Yeah.
because I hadn't seen Sabbath before that, and that was like a bucket list band for me to see. Right, I was just
the importance of that for guys like us that are lifelong metalheads to like have Black Sabbath in front of us. Like these are like the grandfathers of metal and so important in that genre. And it's like, there they are. They're right fucking, we're in the same room.
Yeah. It's like when you're a kid and you watch pro wrestling and you look and you meet one of these guys or see them live and they feel like giants. Like you're just like, holy shit. Seeing Tony Iommi on that stage, that's how I felt. I was just like, holy fuck. Yeah. Like I was just like, that's the guy. Like that's
all of that. Hearing them play, like listening, going like this is Sabbath. I'm not listening to their CD or like
It was. There was about a good 20 minutes of just being in awe.
Mm-hmm. Oh, just total fanboy.
Where I didn't even talk to Adam. I was just like, holy shit. Like that's Black Sabbath. Like I was just.
Yeah, you're having a stroke moment.
Well, that was my second show was with you. The first time I saw him with Colin, and that was I remember when they came out, like tears came into my eyes, and it was and I was just like, oh my god, like there they are right there, and it was just like.
And I had seen Ozzy.
Emotional.
I had seen Ozzy before, but it's still not Sabbath. Like, right?
Yeah.
Like to see,
And I never saw Ozzy without Sabbath, which I honestly wish I did.
Yeah.
But like I said, back in the 80s. That Bark at the Moon time was, I mean, in my formative metal years, Bark at the Moon was probably one of the top albums.
Yeah, for sure. The Up in Smoke tour I saw in Vancouver, which was a hip hop tour.
I saw the Cheech and Chong Up in Smoke.
Yeah, I was thinking Cheech and Chong too. I was like, because I saw them too, but
that was a crazy. Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, Ice Cube.
Holy shit, dude!
It was like the who's who of like West Coast. Like it was, and it was. I don't think I've ever like there was so much weed in the air, man. Like it was just you got high just standing there, right? Yeah. It was like this is awesome. Like, and much like Sabbath, Dr. Dre and stuff, dudes that I grew up listening to.
Yeah, all those guys. Like,
excuse me. Yeah. So
that's a whole like Murderer's Row right there of just
man. That was kind of like the same idea
influence.
As like the Slayer Farewell tour, where you had all these top-notch acts on the same bill, and it was like holy shit, like it was crazy. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite bands to see live, and I would say it's probably the one I've seen the most of my entire life. I think I've seen them 9 times now, which is Dropkick Murphys.
Okay, yeah.
It's just
I've
just
never
a party.
Seen them.
It's just a party, man. Like they're just the most energetic. Like I've always been a big fan of the band.
Yeah, they do have a lot of fun too.
They have a lot of fun. Like you leave a Dropkick Murphys show drunk every time. You never like it's because it's just got that whole.
Well, I think Dropkick Murphy is actually Italian for "you must drink a lot." Like, don't Google translate me, but I'm pretty sure that loosely translated is what it means in Italian.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah, and those like the Testament concerts. I mean, they're legendary thrash, right? Like,
and they're so bang on and tight every show. Like
they don't disappoint.
So good at what
those
they do.
Those guys never miss.
And I have not seen them, which I'm so.
That's one I would highly recommend.
Next time they come, you're coming with us.
Yeah, for sure.
Seeing Jay-Z live was really cool.
Yeah,
that was up there.
Mr. Beyonce.
This pre-Beyonce Jay-Z. Yeah, that was pretty awesome. But like, as far as time machines go, where would you go?
So like time machine to go back
anywhere you want.
Go back in time. There's like quite a few iconic concerts. Like the Live Aid show would be a big one. Yeah. But like the Moscow airport for the Metallica concert, that Monsters of Rock. They had Metallica, AC/DC, Bon Jovi, Motley Crue, the Scorpions, like all these just killer rock bands at the time. And there's estimates of 1 million people at that show. Iron Maiden, the Rock in Rio concert that they did. I watched that video, and just to see of people there and how good Iron Maiden performed on that one, was like, oh my god.
Some of the concerts in South America get so big.
Yeah, and South Americans love metal.
Oh yeah, some of the best like the concerts that they get over there, it's fucking crazy.
Yeah, right. And same thing like in Europe, their music festivals are.
Yeah,
like they just
like those 3-day music festivals they have with like every day.
Yeah, like their C and D stages are like amazing.
Yeah,
just
yeah, for sure.
But for all time to go back and see one act, or are we talking like a concert? Because
both.
Because the Big Four toured, right? So,
yeah. What was that tour that had Guns N' Roses and Metallica where somebody lit themselves on fire?
Yeah, James blew up on stage. Yeah.
Right. That would have been a cool one to go to just because of where they were. They were like such in their prime at that time.
Both
right?
of them
like,
were huge.
Yeah, that would have been cool too.
The only problem with that, it was like an 8-hour concert, but you had like 5 hours in between Metallica and Guns N' Roses whenever Axl decided to come on stage.
That's the thing with Guns N' Roses. You always have to put up with Axl's fucking bullshit antics.
Well, not anymore. Like when I saw him here, they're. I mean, he's totally different now, but at that time, it was so much that. But then too, like at that time, they were in their prime. So would it have been worth the 3-hour wait to see them when they finally come on stage? Depending on Axl's mood, depending on whether he did a good show or not. So I guess you'd have to pick one to go to. I would probably go to the one right before Montreal when James blew up. Not the one after.
Yeah.
But I mean, his replacement was awesome. It was that John Marshall replaced him, and he did great. He was actually Kirk Hammett's guitar tech.
Yeah.
So
every time I read Guns N' Roses books and biographies, I'm always thinking, man, I would hate to be in the band with this Axl fucking prick, man.
See, if we could go back in time to a Guns N' Roses show, I'd go to like the Whiskey.
Yeah.
Like way back then, pre-Appetite.
Yeah.
Like go see them at that point in time.
Definitely.
Even that, like, let's just take the time machine back to Hollywood in like 1986.
Sunset Strip.
And just, spend a weekend down there or even like...
Just go from club to club to club.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Could your liver take that? Like,
maybe.
I don't know.
Well, would we be younger then? Like, how does time travel work?
Back,
yeah, that's a good question.
Can we if we're in theoretical here? I mean, we might as well all choose to be 22.
Yeah.
Then we can pretty much pollute ourselves as hard as humanly possible and stuff.
Oh yeah, my liver would definitely handle that.
Absolutely. So who would you say is an artist that you've never seen that if you could go back to go to see
like go back to somebody in the past, like somebody that's gone.
Would you watch Hendrix lighting a guitar on fire?
Oh yeah, Hendrix would be right up there.
I mean, like, who do you go see, right? And I'm confused because I would go back and see Simon and Garfunkel. There's
so many different genres, right?
Hendrix, Queen. To see Freddie Mercury, a Zeppelin show.
It's easier if your view is narrower and you just want to be metal or you want to be rock or you want to see the roots of that path. But if you really have a wide distribution of musical taste, what do you choose? I mean,
I'd go see
holy crap.
Yeah, man, James Brown would be at the top of my list.
Yeah,
because
Johnny Cash.
At
the Opry or something like that,
Just going back and watching Motown when it was coming out.
Motown.
Oh man, God.
Motown is up there because I love that whole
everything about
R&B
when
soul.
They were coming out.
Motown
that would be good. Yeah.
And some of those,
especially in Detroit. All the Detroit sound and stuff. There's a lot of that.
Yeah, Motown would be up there. James Brown for me for sure because I'm a huge fan because I think he's
Skinner.
Man.
Fuck yeah, there is so many.
There's so many of different genres, right? I go see Run DMC in their prime,
or even going to see Metallica at one of those small venues and stuff.
I'd want to see Metallica around the Kill 'Em All.
Yeah.
In the first album, and no, I'd rather see them after Ride the Lightning because then they'd be playing from both albums. Because with just Kill 'Em All, it's like they're
we
a
got
little
a time
bit.
Machine, dude. We'll go to both.
Both, both.
Yeah, but I mean, from Kill 'Em All to Master, within that time, so you get
definitely with Cliff for sure.
Definitely with Cliff,
with Cliff
for sure, definitely.
And that's where that time machine aspect comes in. Is the one thing that I never did really see was a whole lot of Cliff. I mean, I've heard him obviously on all the albums, but I never saw anything really of Cliff. I mean, I saw Jason Newsted a lot. You know, and then Trello, of course. But
I think way back then they didn't quite have all the recording capacities that they did, but they have recorded so much stuff. And during the pandemic, they had Metallica Mondays on their YouTube channel, where every Monday they released a previously unreleased concert, and some of them were dating back to 86 and 87.
Nice.
And it was so cool to see this, but they've been recording every show for their whole career, and now just listening to the radio this morning. I got the text on my phone. They're releasing 5 new, for the next 5 weekends, they're releasing 5 new live concerts that nobody's ever seen before. And like, and that's why when we saw them in Edmonton, like they had the 6 cameras there. Like that's why they film those things. Like,
I'm curious about the one that I saw them in Vancouver where they were filming the IMAX for.
Go fuck yourself. For those listening, Colin went to that concert, was there when they filmed the movie, and has rubbed it in my face ever since because I wasn't there.
The part that you're skipping over is when I phoned you up and said, do you want to come? Because my wife was saying, I would rather Adam come and watch this with you. And then she went and had a great night.
Yeah, but I was poor then. I could barely afford to go to see Metallica in the city I lived in, let alone fly to another city and see them. But
it was fantastic. But the question is did they record that one and keep it recorded outside of what they released for the movie? Because that would be really of interest for me because I haven't seen that. Yeah. I've seen the movie, obviously, but I haven't seen anything of the recording of it.
Well, I know they did it over 2 nights.
3.
Was it 3?
Yeah, my brother went to all 3 nights.
Well, fuck your brother too, then.
He's the one who got the tickets for us, and then he went with Leah and I the one night, and then he went with his. Well, he went with a couple of people from his work, plus then he had some friends that were down, and he had a string of different tickets in different areas. So so then he went one night and he went the next night, and then they announced the third. So that was a Friday, Saturday, and then they did I think it was a Monday or something like that. Yeah. And they went and did a third one just for spot shooting and everything else.
Yeah. No, that would be cool to like be at one of those concerts that was taped. And put out, especially some of the concerts that like we watch. We have these tons of DVDs at home and VHS cassettes of like certain concerts. So like go back in time to be at one of those ones would be kind of cool. Like I have a Queen at Wembley, where like Freddie finished wearing like the Queen's outfit and the crown and the cape and all that shit. Such a cool concert. Like go back and be at that show would be awesome. Even the Freddie Mercury tribute show that they did in '91. Would be awesome to go see that, or any rock concert in Wembley. I think would be, on my bucket list.
Would you go back to NWA?
Oh hell yeah! I'll go back to NWA.
I'd go to that one for sure.
I'd go back and see Bob Marley for sure. I'd go see Bowie like maybe twice. And while we're talking on that whole Sunset Strip vibe, I can't believe the name escapes my mind now, but that club with the punk rock.
Like the Pussycat place? What is it?
Where they all used to go and why can't I?
Are you thinking CBGB?
Yes.
That's in New York though?
Right. That's it.
Okay.
That's but for like, because that was for like the punk scene, kind of like, and some of the acts that have performed there, like
the Sex Pistols and the
Ramones and just all the like Bad Brains and
New York Dolls.
New York Dolls would be cool to see.
Yeah, they would be cool to see.
Yeah.
And I think for like bands that are touring now, like somebody we could go see theoretically now, I would like my ultimate bucket list show would be Rammstein.
Mine too.
I haven't seen them, but especially like if I could go see them in Europe. Or like in Paris, because they themselves have said their best show will always be in Paris because they feel bad about what the Nazis did during the war. So to make up for it, they just put on their best show in Paris.
Rammstein's like that's at the top of my
especially an outdoor show where you get the big giant fireballs.
And somewhere like in Europe or something where you get the actual experience of like, because I want the whole visuals and like all the fire, like
indoors is all right, but like I heard that when I first moved to Calgary they played here, and I just try and picture Rammstein in the Saddle Dome.
Yeah.
I was like, what? Like, would they have birthday sparklers and shit?
Yeah.
Like, because
that roof would come down, I would imagine.
Yeah. Like I went to Kiss here with Jamie. Yeah. And Jamie was blown away. He had never seen them. And he looked at me many times throughout the night and was like, wow, like that was awesome. And I was really bored by the show because I've seen them in much bigger venues. Yeah. And I know what they can do with their pyro and stuff. Yeah. And you can't do that in the Saddle Dome just the way it's built.
Yeah.
But it was like so cool to share that with my buddy who, after all these years of making fun of me for liking Kiss, midway through, turned and looked at me and was like, I get it.
Yeah.
Now I get it. Like, holy shit. And it was like, yeah, dude, like that's awesome. And like, especially the part when Paul Stanley like gets on this little ring and flies from the stage to the back of the arena and like sings back there. And Jamie's just like, wow, that's really cool. Like he'd never seen anybody do that. Usually the guys just stay at the stage, but he's like, he wants everybody to be a part of it. And I love artists who will do things like that, like put themselves out there or do whatever they can to make sure that the person at the very back of the arena gets to be part of the show.
Yeah.
So did you go back and see an old school Kiss concert?
Oh yeah, if I could go to see Kiss in like Detroit or something, that Destroyer for sure.
Oh yeah, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I would love that.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, it's the amount of places you could go. Like I would definitely want to see a lot of the soul greats.
Yeah.
You know, like Al Green, Sam Cooke. Like I would love to see those guys back in their heyday.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been pretty awesome.
In some of those bands, like I don't listen to a lot of that, so I'm kind of out on this conversation. But like, I would also give it a try too, right? Yeah. Like it's because I know how important they are to their like style of music and influence that they've had on other people that I do listen to and have heard before. So like, as a music fan, like let's go. And we got a time machine, so let's go fucking learn.
I think
history,
you would like it because you're like a true music fan.
Yeah.
You appreciate music even if it's not something.
Yeah.
You appreciate the influence and stuff, even if it's not a band you regularly
And there's
listen
something
to.
different about live versus like recorded. I've gone and seen some bands live that I don't necessarily enjoy listening to on a regular basis and been like, wow, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
But I've also gone to some bands that I enjoy listening to and seen them live and be like, that wasn't what I was expecting.
Yeah.
So what about some of the big all-time greats like Beatles or Elvis or any of those? Would you guys be interested?
Oh,
like Beatles pre North American,
sure.
Beatles pre North American touring, or as soon as they arrived and you get to see the girls' ass.
The Beatles at Shea Stadium.
Yeah.
When they came to the U.S. and everybody just went nuts.
Bonkers.
Yeah, I go see the Beatles. I mean, they're not one of my favorite bands, but I'm a fan and I know how important they are to like, I know they've influenced a lot of the bands that I love.
Yeah.
Right. So just for that alone, I'd want to see them.
Yeah. I bring them up because I was just reading an article not too long ago about Rolling Stone released like the top 50 singers of all time or frontmen of all time.
Yeah.
And Lennon made like top 15.
Yeah,
really?
And McCartney was not
those
on
Rolling
the list.
Stone lists. I never take them. Like,
I
most of the time I'm shaking my head when I'm reading them, and it's just like, it is what it is. Like,
well, that's that thing where Colin always tries to hammer it into my head too about like being subjective on stuff and like what you may like, somebody else might not. And the Rolling Stone magazine is like that. I've always found that magazine particularly to be a little snobby with their stuff and try too hard to be like, we're the ones that know more than you. So like, we're going to do the obvious. Like when they do their guitar player ones, right? Like Eddie Van Halen is always in the top 3, which he should be. You know, Slash should be up there. Jimi Hendrix is up there. And like, I play guitar a little bit. I'm not super great at it, but I play enough to know. And Jimmy is very unique and he was so influential, but on a technical level, he wasn't that good. But he was able to make sounds and create sounds with his guitar that other people weren't able to do.
Yeah.
And that's what makes him so good, even though his technical ability isn't on par with most of the other guys he plays with, but his influence and what he did and the music he created, makes him that way. And it's always disappointing to see how low the Rolling Stone magazine ranks Randy Rhoads.
Yeah, no
criminally.
And that tells me that they don't know shit.
No, they don't know shit.
Like it's because Randy Rhoads he's
amazing,
so good.
Could you imagine being around to hear the very first time the distortion pedal was used, and just the sound, because it's so different, so unique, and it's like it just did what now?
So when we talk about going back in time to see Ozzy concerts, you were talking you want to go see Bark at the Moon.
Yeah.
Well, that was Jake E. Lee. Like, let's go back to when Randy was there and hear that, right? Like, and I mean, Jake E. Lee is an amazing guitar player as well. Ozzy's always had killer guitar players with him, but like, it's hard to touch Randy.
I know, Elvis is considered the king and all that, but I would not waste a drop of gas on this time machine to see Elvis at all.
Yeah, because I imagine the gas on a time machine is probably pretty.
If it takes gas,
it's got to be fucking high octane for sure.
Right? We got to use that wisely.
Put it bluntly, if that's the case, we can also go back to the late '80s and invest in an Apple computer and not have to worry about the price of gas.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's a good point.
But
if we did that, then we could even afford this time machine too. Because I don't think those are cheap. Otherwise, everybody would have one.
I would definitely go back a lot and see a lot of blues artists that I love, because blues is like one of my favorite genres. Like I would want.
Which surprises me with your answer for Elvis, because I mean, he synergized. He took straight blues and morphed and became rock, right? So
for Elvis, you mean?
Yeah.
I would rather listen to Chuck Berry.
Yeah.
To be honest, I look at him like people look at Elvis. To me, Chuck Berry is the king of rock. Like, I mean, you know, like as far as that style, like to compare it with Elvis, I don't know if there's a better comparison or not, but those guys like Muddy Waters and Chuck Berry, like I would basically love to go and see that whole lineup for Chess Records, which I believe is the greatest label of all time as far as talent on the label. You know,
even better than Sun.
What's that?
Even better than Sun Records.
Yeah,
better than Death Row.
Yes, yeah, better than everything.
Really,
better than everything. Like Muddy Waters, Chuck Berry, Etta James, Little Walter.
Yeah. Well, and I guess and it's different musical styles.
Ooh. Okay. Well, it's up there. I don't know. Motown. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Yeah,
that's a tough one.
They're up. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the blues, like those old blues shows that you see footage of or that I've read about, it's just like, holy crap! Like
I think I'd have to go back to, if not even individual years, I'd need to do a decade by decade by decade. I'd love to go back into the who would I see in the 40s? I can think of tons in the 50s, 60s, 70s. And of course, 80s, 90s, and all the way through. I mean, I was conscious of music come the 80s, but like the 70s, just think about all the stuff that was happening throughout all of that. Me being a lover of, you know, a lot of electronic music that you're not, all of that root is in disco. And oh man,
people can.
I don't know if I could do a disco show.
People can trash disco all they want.
ABBA and Boney M are top on my lists for going out to see for sure.
Who would be?
ABBA and Boney M.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of those two, but I know what you mean. Like it's if you're like I could see why you'd want to see that. Like
it's like meeting and hanging out with your grandparents
just because
right?
it's ABBA.
Yeah, I don't know. Like ABBA's music's never really done anything for me. But
I could also do a country by country tour and like hit Australia and see AC/DC and various other bands that are from Australia, and then hit the UK and see a bunch of and just country by country by country and decades of each of those ones, because the development in all those different areas was, I mean, it was prolific. It was amazing. And it was crazy how different silos in those different countries did things so different. I mean, you look at punk in the UK, it was far different than punk in North America.
American punk,
absolutely. Yeah.
Like Sex Pistols, whole different ballgame, right?
When I think like UK punk is a lot more like raw and non-polished. Like
it's very
non-polished.
It's like a punch in the face.
American punk to me seemed a lot more like metal, a lot heavier music, and like it's weird to say, but I think the American punk bands were probably better musicians, but they lacked whatever it was that UK punk bands had,
the attitude
in their in that attitude and in that they truly didn't give a shit, whereas the American punk bands wanted to, like, they gave a shit about what they were doing,
and I think the American
and
sound
they practiced.
The American sound is more crafted, so the term for that is contrived. So it's not that they were bad musicians, and it's not that they didn't live the entire ethos of it, but it was definitely more architected to be that and to be a bit of that, but a bit more mainstreamy. To say it wasn't architected,
they looked at it more as a business. In the American bands, I think too, it was like, and I just felt like the UK bands that did it they were doing it to like fuck you to everybody, and like this is what we want to play, and just how they did it, how they looked at it, how they viewed it, and I don't think they really cared if they made it big or not.
Yep.
Whereas like in America, you get into an industry to make it.
Yep.
Like no matter what industry it is, like anything you do it to be successful at it.
Yep.
So taking that mentality away from their punk music just changes the sound a little bit. And it's like, it's still good. Like American punk music is good.
Yep.
It just, in my opinion, not as good as, or at least in my personal taste, not as good as the UK.
But if you had a
music.
time machine, it'd be to go see UK punk.
Oh yeah.
Not the US punk.
I'd go see the Clash.
I might
That
see
would be
some
amazing.
US punk, but I would definitely
Yeah.
make a lot more.
Yeah, but I mean,
UK
like
punk.
I could stand sitting for a good chunk of time in the 70s. There's, like, I would love to go see Fleetwood Mac back in the day.
Or like especially like the Peter Green, Fleetwood
Yeah.
Mac, like early when they were a blues band. Like,
and some good old Eric Clapton from back in the day. Like,
yeah, like
there's-
Cream or,
yeah, there's some really good stuff from
Well, in
the
the 70s had so many amazing musicians in amazing genres. Like I think they probably had the biggest roster of musicians that were good across all different genres was in the 70s.
Yeah, but you gotta. It's kind of funny because when you look at music, you have to realize that it was a burgeoning thing that started when, right? I mean, you didn't have a crap ton of bands in the 20s. You just really didn't.
No, but
So-
you only had like two styles of music in the 20s.
Exactly. So
right.
music is kind of like an inverted pyramid, right? So back in the day, it was the tip. And so all of that is the foundation. It's strange to say that all of that is the foundation for how big and diverse and huge it is now.
But I still think the 70s roster is better than any other decade.
yeah,
it's hard to go against the 80s hair bands and everything else. Like there's just different evolutions and different
but that's
things.
just one tiny little
There's
group
no
though. So like
thrash.
all 80s, but when you look at all genres in the 80s
Yeah.
and you compare that with all the genres in the 70s and the musicians in those,
Yeah.
I think the 70s had the better roster than the 80s did.
But
even
those-
though my personal favorite music comes from the 80s, like with thrash and metal and hair bands and stuff like that. But it's hard to argue with so many of those 70s.
But that roster of the 70s bands were still around in the 80s for the most part.
Well,
right?
yeah.
Like it was very, very few where they all just decided to call it quits and go away. I mean, there's a string of one-hit wonders, of course, but the sheer volume of bands that were around in the 70s that were still in the 80s, because all the people who grew up, listening to when Elvis was crafting a whole new industry, and all the people who grew up listening to, all this developmental music, creating new genres of music, they became those 80s bands. And they were able to play side by side with a lot of their heroes, in some cases as opening bands and as, and then competing bands and complementary bands. The 80s, you got to be able to see the vast majority of those 70s bands right beside the 80s bands. So there is a huge amount. But the problem was, we were trapped in freaking Yukon. There was no coming out to see that. I mean, it just wasn't an availability for us, which makes me want to cry just thinking about how much we missed being up there. But, that would be the biggest thing on the time machine. I'd have to relocate myself, not just go back in time.
But relocate where you
go
live,
about 5,000 miles south.
I would agree with the 70s being the top, but like the 60s are right there too. Because they had all the psychedelic
Woodstock was there
rock
for a
and all
reason.
I
think even in the 60s though, again, you're now focusing, like all that talent is now shrinking towards one specific style of music. Whereas what I'm saying is with the 70s, like the 70s had the best funk, they had the best blues, they had the best, really the only disco, but like they had the best rock, they had the best country. Like it's across the board, all different styles.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by like their roster of musicians.
Folk music kind of peaked in the 60s.
Yeah. And like it's...
Yeah,
that's
true.
When you
That's
look
a
at the
good point,
80s, there was all these amazing bands, but again, the 80s kind of like shrunk down. The talent all fit into like smaller groups of music rather than being spread out for it.
Fair, yeah. No doubt. Yeah, that's
because the 80s really had like, rock, and we'll just call that rock, like hair metal, rock altogether. Like thrash on its own, we love it, but as far as a mainstream thing, they weren't.
Oh no,
right?
No. It was in. It
So
was being
you
born
had
in the
like
80s.
rock, which was pretty light at the time, and then pop music, like
Yeah.
Michael Jackson and Madonna and Cyndi Lauper and stuff
For the
like
80s?
that. For the 80s, but in the 80s, country dropped down too. There wasn't a whole lot of really good country in the
No.
80s.
Country
when you
was
compare,
evolving in the 80s.
yeah, but when you look at country in the 70s, guys like the Highwaymen and Waylon
Absolutely.
Jennings and
The
Willie
outlaw
Nelson and
stuff.
all those guys, like that
Yeah.
group of country, Charlie Daniels.
Yeah.
So much better. And even when you get the country rock and the southern rock, like Skinner and the Allman Brothers and Molly Hatchet, like that's...
You're just a few years younger than me, and you're a couple of years younger than Adam. So you guys probably don't remember the genre renewing version of country that was referred to as new country that sprung up in the 80s.
The very tail end and early 90s.
That started with Garth Brooks, though, right? So I mean, it.
And again, that's right at the tail end of the 80s and I would say more 90s. Garth is a 90s artist, more so than an 80s. Because he was bigger in the 90s, and that's where his defining years were versus in the 80s.
Yeah.
I mean, in the 80s, they had like Alabama and, the Oak Ridge Boys and stuff like that.
That was hardly
But,
country.
I mean,
That's almost pop country.
yeah.
The 80s had some.
Elvira's a good tune, though.
Fishing in the Dark's awesome, too.
Fishing in the Dark's awesome, too. Yeah.
There's lots and lots of good tunes. I'd have a hard time if I had a time machine that only had, say, 2 charges. I could only go back twice.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Oh, man.
So I could go back to one, and I could go back to one more, and then I had enough gas to either go to one more, and that's where I had to end up, or I could come back home. I got family. I'd need to come back home. So if I only had 2 to go to,
You don't think they have girls there?
start
You got a time machine, huh?
Start over. Yeah.
Yeah, but and I agree with you with the 70s
You
being.
find a girl that actually likes you this time.
I make my wife sound like she doesn't. She likes me fine. It's
haven't-
you.
You haven't met her?
She likes me fine. It's you that she doesn't.
But yeah, the 70s, yeah, I think that's probably the. But the 80s, though, like to me, when I think of the 80s, I don't think hair metal, even though that was one of the defining genres of the 80s.
Yeah.
For me, 80s is punk, which is the greatest era of punk rock, is the 80s.
Yeah.
Hip hop, which you had like Public Enemy.
You're the
Right, yeah.
infancy of hip hop in the 80s. So that's kind of like you can go into the tail end of the 70s and find thrash, but it's few and far between.
Right.
Very,
you can go to
very
the
little.
70s and go see Grandmaster Flash.
Yeah.
But in the 80s, like early 80s, that's when it really got going, like with like the big groups and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And what was so there was thrash, punk, and hip hop. To me, those three, that's what I think about when I think of 80s.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And out of those 3, though, I would say only hip hop was really like mainstream,
Yeah.
big. Like
Yeah.
thrash
yeah,
and
yeah.
punk had very small groups
True.
of dedicated
True.
fans to that.
Yeah. And even funk too in the 80s. Like late 70s was kind of started, but like in the 80s, like
Well,
all
I
that
think a
George
lot of the
Clinton,
80s funk-
Parliament Funkadelic, and
Yeah, a lot of the 80s funk, they took like the cool funk from the 70s and then they added some like the electronic influences from the 80s and made stuff, like that Funky Town like we were talking about earlier. Some of those songs that have both these different influences to them that like I enjoyed them. And it could just be because like that's when I heard them, and at a young age you get impressions in your brain and stuff.
Yeah.
But even like for the longest time going back to 70s funk, I never really liked that. And now I can listen to it with a different set of ears, and it's still it's not something I put on often.
Yeah.
But it's
my
it's
biggest
there.
thing right now is that I've seen a lot of bands that are well past their prime, and I've seen them past their prime.
Yeah.
And like CCR, for instance, I saw them well past their prime. Leonard Skinner, saw them well past their prime. I'm
that
seeing them
Leonard
on,
Skinner show was awesome.
Oh,
Even though
absolutely.
they
on their farewell tour, and it was still awesome. But it's not the original group with everything.
No.
Like, would you like to go see?
I would love to go back and see him with Ronnie.
Would you like to see
for sure.
AC/DC with Bon Scott?
Yeah.
Oh, Bon Scott.
Yeah. How did we not fucking forget that one? Like that just shows like how many good bands and things there can be when like we forget about AC/DC with Bon Scott.
When you see some of these flyers from the 70s and the lineups on it, and it's like, $7.
Yeah.
And there's like 6 6 bands that you're just like, I would pay like $60 to see individually every one of these.
Yeah.
Or at least like
we paid $7 for one of their songs on fucking iTunes now.
Yeah,
like,
go back to the '90s too, because I had like Pearl Jam back then, Nirvana back then, like these bands.
The beginning of grunge to go right back to like for like Mudhoney
go
and
hang out in
like
Seattle for a few weeks, eh?
Oh yeah,
man,
that was
Oh, man. Some of these bands in their infancy, where you can see
if I
them
could go
and
back
realize.
then, I would try and like meet Kurt at some small show and say, "Hey, listen, at some point in your life, you're gonna meet this blonde chick. Don't fuck her, man. Whatever you do, don't."
You're a brunette man from this point forward. Just so you know.
Yeah, I can't tell you why, because it'll like fuck up the whole like world.
The butterfly wings are flapping here. Yeah.
Stay away from that blonde chick, man. Nothing good's gonna happen.
No doubt. That whole grunge scene was one that was like, from like the way Adam was there for hair metal, in the thick of it. Like that was for me was grunge. Was like that was the first scene that I was like, you know, that I felt like I was like a part. Like I'm a lot. Like this is, you know,
this is your music.
You were there from the beginning. And I mean, I have lots of different musics that I love. Like I love thrash just as much as grunge. But for
you
grunge,
found thrash after the fact, right? Grunge happened when you were developing your musical identity, right?
When I was developing, like
thrash
like
was already there. You found it.
I found it, and I went
grunge
back.
Grew with you.
Yes, that's exactly like with thrash. It was like I found it, I loved it. I went back, researched, found all this shit. Well, with grunge, it was starting right there as I was getting into music and becoming.
Yeah, you couldn't research it because it hadn't happened yet.
Yeah, right. And
you
had
to wait till tomorrow.
And like I said, I just remember my earliest memory of Beavis and Butthead seeing that Alice in Chains clip, and from there on, it sounded like all these grunge bands just started coming out of the woodwork, and it was like, holy crap, this is an amazing fucking genre. Like it was just, you know, like to see like Nirvana during the Bleach era.
Yeah.
Like, which still my favorite Nirvana record, like just how raw and unpolished that album, like, you know, and like old Stone Temple Pilots, and like it was Mudhoney. Mudhoney was
thrash to me was kind of like 80s kids, the kids that were born in the late 60s, early 70s, and became the thrash people of the early 80s.
Yeah.
I think we were classed as the generation that was neglected, because the boomer parents all had a whole bunch of other things and were far more interested in hanging out with each other. And so we were the neglected generation. So I think thrash was anger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thrash was, I want to piss off my parents.
And
like,
but then when you had a lot of those parents were mellowing down and having kids later in life, and they were spending more time with their families and everything else, you had a different generation of kids in the 90s. And I think what was coming out of grunge was angst.
Yeah.
And so the two main drivers between those two different things, hair metal was all about just getting laid.
Yeah. That's exactly it. Yeah.
So it's.
Why do you think I had long hair?
And played a guitar.
And played a guitar.
Just good enough.
Do you know what? That shit works.
And I think that's maybe every time.
I'm not good at guitar, but I can play enough.
And I think every time Adam shits on Pearl Jam, I think that's why I'm like so quick to come defend him. I was like, hey, I was
I don't
there
shit
when
on Pearl Jam. I shit on Eddie Vedder.
Eddie Vedder, right. But like,
he's just got fucking
right.
mode.
But like, it was like, but like,
Eddie Vedder.
But like, having been there,
and I really like Eddie Vedder's voice.
I like Eddie Vedder's voice. Yeah. But I also understand what he's saying about the.
He sounds like a rougher Bob Dylan.
Okay, so if you had to listen to two different voices that are a little bit kind of similar-ish, Crash Test Dummies or Eddie Vedder?
Holy fuck!
I was ready to say other as soon as you finished the word Crash Test Dummies. Like whatever's coming next, I'll take that.
Because they both had that really low timbre of their voice and everything else.
Yeah, but I can understand the Crash Test Dummy guy.
I
don't like what he says, but I can understand.
When you write a song where all the lyrics are I don't respect you.
Yeah, when you only use one letter to write a song.
That's not a song. How did you get rich from, like, how are you selling?
Tasha, earmuffs, honey.
I was like, really? That's what you came up with?
Okay, but Superman song was a fantastic song.
But he never made any money.
But he was saving the world from Solomon Grundy. So
what was he making when he was working as a newspaper fucking reporter or something? Was he not making money there?
Yeah, he probably made like 30 grand a
was
year.
Was Superman working for free at the Daily Planet? Like
maybe, I don't know.
I don't know. But
he wasn't a good reporter because he never finished his stories. He always had to fly off and do shit.
The song was that he never made any money for saving the world from Solomon Grundy. So it didn't talk about what he did.
Fair enough. I probably just
didn't
get to the end
Grundy
of the song.
Related to Mrs. Grundy from the Archies?
Probably not.
That'd be kind of cool if they did. That would be a fucking comic crossover I'd like to see.
That would definitely be a crossover.
Yeah. No doubt. But what were we talking about before Crash Test Dummies? Oh, the two voices.
The two voices, because they're low in timbre and tend to be. Well, there's not very many people. It's like Greta Van Fleet and Robert Plant, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they have similar timbre in terms of tone and everything else, regardless of There's going to be comparisons for various different things. That would be my two that I'd pull out. I mean, pretty random and pretty out there for comparison.
Like, okay, when you talk about I have to listen to their voice, like I have to have a conversation with them, or I got to listen to their music.
Music.
Oh fuck. It'd be Pearl Jam then. Yeah.
Pearl Jam. You have to think about that,
but only pre-10, nothing after.
So including 10 though.
Yeah.
10 was a great album.
10 was a phenomenal album.
It was like Eddie pierced his tongue or something, and it swelled up and got infected, and he just never fixed it.
A bee sting.
A bee sting? I don't know, but something happened to him, man. Like, he just...
I like his voice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But 10, like, Vitology, Versus, those three albums.
Yeah.
I thought they were great.
10 was good. There's some good songs on there. I really liked Even Flow. And Black's on that album too, right?
Black's on that whole album.
But then, like, Jeremy's a stupid song. I don't like Jeremy. It just... I don't know. It doesn't vibrate for me. There's just... I never did like that. Was kind of the start where I was like, all right, I think I'm done with Pearl Jam.
Is that a song that you tell people, or that you say you don't like that song today? Look at you like, what?
A lot of people do because they're like, oh, Jeremy's such a good song, and it's like
everybody has.
It's one of their popular songs.
Jeremy was a shocking song, and so it got a lot of attention because keep in mind you have a couple different ways of getting popular. Number one is you have a catchy tune and people can't get it out of their heads.
Yeah.
The next thing is you can either have shocking lyrics or you can have a shocking performance.
Yeah.
Right. And so those are the main ways to get popular.
So why didn't you? Is there a reason you didn't like Jeremy, or just don't like it?
I just don't like the song. It never. I didn't like the way the vocals are sung, like the vocal lines to it. I didn't like the music in it. How it's played didn't appeal to me. And then that's when I kind of stopped with Pearl Jam, because then once it was weird, like once that song annoyed me, then it was like every song kind of sounded the same after that.
Yeah.
And they tumbled off for me. And then Eddie started singing the way he sings, and I was like, that's even fucking worse. Yeah. Although when him and Chris Cornell did Temple of the Dog, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Like, I love that album. Hunger Strike is an amazing song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he sings in that one. Yeah. But then, like, Chris Cornell is amazing in it too. So, like, the two of them did really well together. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a band I'd go back and use the time machine to go see them in, like, 1990.
Yeah.
I'd go see Soundgarden and then say, like, hey, you might want to start this other band to, like, audio something. Don't do it.
Alice in Chains and Soundgarden, that would be my two
so
grunge picks.
If you could have a grunge concert, like throw some Nirvana, Pearl Jam,
like a festival
Soundgarden,
style,
yeah, festival style. Where would you take it up to?
Who's your opener, and who's your headliner?
Would you throw Collective Soul in there?
Hell no, I hate Collective Soul. I think they are Nickelback before Nickelback.
They're the grunge Nickelback.
I like Collective Soul.
I
like put them as grunge.
I like Collective Soul.
I wouldn't put them in grunge.
No, yeah, a lot of people pit them into the same movement, right?
This is actually the first time.
Well, they're in that, like, alternative group.
Yeah.
With, like, Live and those type bands, not in the grunge part, I think.
Yeah. No,
they're great live, though. They put on a great show live. Yeah.
I would definitely have Alice in Chains as my main headliner. If I could have two headliners, I would do Soundgarden and Alice in Chains.
I can't go see Alice in Chains anymore.
No? How come?
I took my wife to go see Alice in Chains 2 weeks before our wedding, and she decided to sort of get in a fist fight.
Really?
Yeah, because it's a good time when you're at the concert 2 weeks before your wedding. That's the best time to get half your hair pulled out of your head and start throwing down.
I mean,
It's pretty entertaining.
Yeah.
She came out of it fairly unscathed, but the girl walked away with a handful of hair for sure.
Oh, that's a story to remember.
Yeah, no
Definitely.
Yeah.
You can't have two headliners.
You can't have two headliners. Then I'm going Alice in Chains as the headliner.
So who's the headliner with the big four when they went?
Metallica.
Only by numbers. Much like when we went to see that one concert with Megadeth and Volbeat.
Megadeth was only the headliner because it was his concert. When you put on the concert, you get to play last.
Yes. But
if I was booking that show, Motorhead would have been the headliner.
Just because of the age?
Just because they're the better band at that time.
But in that concert,
they were not in that concert, but Volbeat was still coming up.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Volbeat hadn't earned that spot yet.
Notice,
so at that show, I would have done still Lacuna Coil, then Volbeat, then Megadeth, then finish with Motorhead. However, if I booked that concert today, Volbeat's the headliner.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Volbeat's really
Volbeat's
good.
But like, I don't know.
It's hard
People
to put
overrate Volbeat, I think.
They're way better than Megadeth live. Way better.
Yeah, I believe that. But I couldn't put anybody ahead of Lemmy as a headliner. For that show that you're talking of, like, it's like if he's alive.
That's the hard thing about Motorhead is because Motorhead is so consistent.
Yeah,
but very consistent, but not at an extremely high level. So they're a really good band for what they were.
Yeah,
but they weren't like the best of the best. You know,
they're kind of like AC/DC. Really they have their formula. Yeah. They stick to it.
Absolutely.
Like, and every song may sound very similar, but they know what their fans want to hear. Like
they know their lane.
Yeah,
and they stuck right to their lane.
Exactly.
Yeah. And AC/DC,
and I mean, is there
a
cooler frontman than Lemmy ever?
Not really.
No, not really. No.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
So who's opening your concert?
Are we talking about the grunge festival?
Your grunge festival.
So
who's opening?
Festival. Okay, so I'll just do like the layer of bands down to the opener. Okay, so you have Alice in Chains as the headliner. Soundgarden comes in before them. Then you have Mudhoney before them. And then the opener would be Green River.
And where's Nirvana?
Oh, fuck. Yeah, Nirvana. I gotta throw Nirvana in there, right? Sorry, Mudhoney. Like, I mean, how many bands can I have in this festival?
Yeah, as many
it's a
as
festival.
You want.
Oh, well, then I'll put Nirvana between Soundgarden and Mudhoney.
You put Nirvana below Alice in Chains?
Yes.
Wow.
Easily. Huh. I'd put every grunge band below Alice in Chains. I mean... Well, Soundgarden, I'd put Soundgarden just like right up there with Alice in Chains.
But is that now like just a personal preference, or like if you were an actual promoter and doing the show?
If you're looking at the industry versus your personal taste,
right? I'm talking about my personal.
Okay.
If I'm doing if I'm seeing it from a promoter's point of view, man, it's hard not to put Nirvana at the very top because they were like one of the biggest, right?
So I would open with Alice in Chains because they would pull that spot off so fucking good. Because Alice in Chains is going to come out and set the tone. And no offense, and this is going to hurt, but a lot of people are going to go get a beer during Mudhoney. And then fucking Soundgarden's going to kill it. And then you got Nirvana at the top. I know you like Mudhoney, but...
so good, though, man. They were just... Yeah. I mean, maybe you're right.
And as a side note, we're definitely not covering all the grunge bands here. There's a lot of grunge bands.
No. Yeah, but
Green River's a cool choice too. Like that's
that's
forgotten about a lot.
They're always forgotten about.
Absolutely obscure.
I think I put some of them on your grunge album, didn't I?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Adam? If you were to put a lineup for a concert
for a grunge,
not grunge, any. He said if he could go back, he'd go back to the grunge.
I would want to do a metal show with Metallica headlining, and then Disturbed, Avenged, and Volbeat all on it.
Yeah.
And I think I would probably open with Avenged Sevenfold, then Disturbed, then Volbeat, then Metallica. I think that would be like, I would love to see that lineup. And that's just like, I've seen all of them. So it's like, that's where I would like to see them and how I would put them on there.
You guys don't have any ambition. If I was going back and I was able to actually write up my favorite lineup, and keep in mind, I've got a time machine, so I can pull people from the 70s and I can pull people from the 80s.
Okay, we're doing the details here.
Well, so I would have a 4-day weekend festival, and I'd start it with 70s, then 80s, then 90s, and then potentially into the 2Ks.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know we got 4 days. I thought it was just one
yeah.
night.
It's a festival. That's why I said you guys.
Okay,
You guys are the ones who said.
Oh,
festival.
okay. Well, then why am I? Okay, there's way more bands I would throw in there.
Well, yeah, it's a lot more bands. I was just like doing a show,
Yeah.
like
It's for metal,
a
though.
concert.
For metal, I would do like if it was a 2-day festival, for example. One day it would be like old school metal lineup,
Yeah.
whereas another
Headlined
day
by Metallica.
What's that?
Headlined by Metallica.
I wouldn't even really call
One of them
Metallica
would be,
old
yeah.
school metal. I would call
But they would-
Metallica kind of
They would fit in with that.
old school metal. I'd be talking like
Maiden,
Judas
Judas
Priest and all the rest. Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You know,
And the big
Okay,
gods
so
of
in that
rock,
case,
right?
then-
like that kind. Like,
Yeah.
and then the
Then I
next
would-
day, like a Metallica, Slayer, more like
The 80s metal thrash.
Right,
kind of
you
stuff.
know
Maybe
what I
the
mean?
first day is like UK and the second day is America.
yeah, that would work.
There
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah, yeah.
But finishing up on my 4-day Grand Slam, it's time to say goodbye. It's another hour.
That's
That's
it.
it.
Another hour already. So there's our concerts episode in there.
So now we know we need
I
a
know we
time
got
machine.
sidetracked for a little bit in there. We're going to figure out. Please subscribe to this and tell people and send us money so we can buy a time machine and,
Yes.
and
Or
do
if-
some of this dumb shit.
Or if you know anybody with a time machine, we can
Yeah.
just buy it.
Or just send us money. You
Yeah,
know,
or
we do that.
Airfare would
We like
work.
beer. We like
can-
pizza. Yeah.
Yeah.
We could go
Well,
to a current show.
Yeah.
Planes are like a time machine if you go like in the right direction. You know, take a nap, you wake up somewhere else. That kind
is-
of counts.
yeah,
That's a time machine right there.
Yeah.
So thank you for listening. If you made it this far, once again, I'm Adam, Rob, Colin. That was our concert episode. Fuck Coldplay.
Sure, yeah. Fuck Coldplay.
Why do you
Fuck
want to
like
get
a
sexual
soul.
with Coldplay? What is it about Coldplay?
It's not a sexual thing, but if it was, I would definitely be on top.
I wanna at one point I wanna know I want to know why you hate them so much. Like
Listen to them
in the
You'll
detail.
figure
That's
out.
it. That's just
they're just
okay.
horrible.
Okay.
Chris Martin's a horrible person. Yeah.
Person?
Hey, this is already we're well past.
Oh, okay.
We gotta stop this.
Next time we'll talk about
Yeah,
Coldplay
he's
later.
a horrible. I don't know enough about Chris Martin. Is he really a bad person?